With an increasing percentage of the population becoming part of the 65 years plus demographic, how will this affect work years and retirement in the future? In Canada, the Canadian Pension Plan, or CPP, started in 1966. The concept is that workers pay a portion of each paycheck towards the CPP, and when they retire, they will receive money back from the government in the form of payments classified as old age security or disability. In the United States, a similar program called Social Security started even earlier in 1940. In Canada, an individual can start receiving CPP payments as early as age 60 and as late as age 70. In the United States, an individual can start receiving Social Security payments as early as age 62 and as late as age 70. However, the earlier you start receiving payments from either of these programs, the smaller the amount each payment will be. Let's explore what this means for the average working person today and over the next few decades. First, let's look at how life expectancy in Canada has changed over the last 125 years. From the graph, you can see that in the 125 years since 1900, life expectancy in Canada has increased a whopping 33 years on average. Even when we look at the life expectancy increase from the mid-1960s, when the CPP was first implemented, people on average are now living an extra 12 years longer. This means that the Canadian Pension Plan has to support people for more than a decade longer after they retire, compared to when it was first implemented. If people retired on average at age 65 back in 1966, the average person depended on CPP for 6.5 years. Now, in 2025, if people retire at age 65, the average person depends on CPP for almost 18.5 years. In other words, in 2025, the average Canadian depends on CPP for around 3 times longer than they did in 1966. One of the changes that federal governments in Canada have made over the past decades is to increase the amount workers pay into the CPP fund. These increases have occurred on a frequent basis. Part of this accounts for inflation, but part of this also is the result of additional payments that are now required with an aging population. The CPP's funds are invested in a wide range of diversified areas through the CPP Investment Board. These include public and private equities, loans, and real estate assets. However, even with these wage deduction increases and additional money that has grown the CPP as a result of investment, there are questions around whether or not the fund will be able to keep up with an ever-increasing number of yearly payouts. Currently, it's estimated that the CPP will be sustainable for about 75 years. However, with global events such as the recent pandemic, as with all investments, the CPP investments are also subject to low or negative returns at times of economic hardship. If we make the assumption that the CPP funds will be available to citizens as they need them after retirement, there is still one pressing question. Will the CPP payments be enough for retirees to live on? The cost of basic items has gone up significantly, especially over the past few years. Part of this was caused by supply chain issues as a result of the pandemic. Other increases were the result of higher demand from rapid population growth and increased energy requirements from things like additional data centers, which require a large amount of energy. Also, energy demand has increased for renewable sources of energy like solar panels and electric vehicles. The initial investment for most green energy technologies is significant. Besides all the steel used for items like wind turbines, a significant amount of energy is needed for mining minerals like lithium and cobalt needed for electric batteries. Electric vehicle batteries weigh between 1,000 and 2,000 pounds. In order to obtain 1 pound of lithium for an electric battery, you need to mine at least 100 pounds of rock. This extraction takes large amounts of energy currently provided mostly by fossil fuels. In addition, wages have increased for many occupations in an attempt to keep up with inflation. All of these factors have increased costs of essential commodities, probably much more than people anticipated just a few years ago. For example, if you had planned to retire in 2030 and you estimated that housing or rental costs would be 50% higher than they were in 2015, this was a significant underestimation. If you had assumed that grocery costs would be 30% higher in 2030 than 2010, the prices have gone up much more. Housing prices in Canada have more than doubled between 2010 and 2025, and we still have 5 years left to go before we hit the 2030 end date of this example. Grocery prices vary by the item and can also have seasonal variation. However, costs for producers such as fertilizer and fuel have increased significantly over the past several years. In 2015, I used to be able to buy a generic loaf of bread for $1.30. Currently, the cost for the same loaf of bread is $2.30. And other items such as dairy and many fruits and vegetables have also significantly increased in price. The loaf of bread has increased in price by just over 75%. For the price that I used to be able to buy 5 loaves of bread 10 years ago, I can't even buy 3 loaves in 2025. Housing has become incredibly expensive. On the positive side, if you have a home or condo, you will be able to sell it for much more than you were able to get a few years ago. This can help pay for a smaller house or apartment if you downsize. However, for those people that are retiring, rents have increased so much that you'll be lucky to get a 1-bedroom apartment for what you used to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment. Also, utilities such as heating, electricity, water services, and garbage collection have also increased. In addition, there are recycling charges in most cities that didn't exist 10 years ago. In addition to the variable costs, most utilities have fixed costs which have also increased in recent years, often more than the rate of inflation. CPP payments and pensions, if you're lucky enough to have a pension, may not even cover the basics of housing, food, and utilities. Therefore, a person may need to pay much more from their savings than they expected just a few years ago. So, what are the consequences of the large price increases, especially on basics, for the average person who is retiring or will be retiring in the next decade? It's very likely that an individual will not be able to live in the same accommodations that they had planned to, even just a few short years ago. This is especially true if someone doesn't currently own their own residence. Paying for a 1-bedroom apartment or even accommodation at a senior's residence is very expensive, and for many people their budget may not be enough to pay for these options. As a result, many seniors will end up living in accommodations that are much more basic than they had planned to for retirement. If they had planned to travel, this may now become unrealistic, since so much of their income will go towards necessities. If someone has to pay an extra $300 to $400 a month on accommodation and groceries than they had planned, the extra annual amount could be the equivalent of the cost of a vacation. Also, if someone does end up living for a long time, say into their 90s, any savings that could be used to supplement their retirement income would have to be spread over a much longer period of time. It's very likely that their savings will run out at some point. In many ways, this boils down to a decreased quality of life relative to what many people were expecting. They just won't have the resources available to them. One of the results of the additional increased cost of most items will be that some people will retire later than they planned to, either as full-time or part-time workers. We already see that more people are working past 65, either as consultants or advisors or by helping in a wide variety of organizations. Many of these positions are part-time and provide supplemental income as well as a sense of belonging and purpose for seniors. It's very rewarding when someone can pass on their knowledge to the next generation. It's likely that seniors can play a strong role in filling gaps which people working full-time cannot fill. Additional workers are often needed for seasonal jobs. Other positions that part-time senior workers can fill are part-time retail positions, ushers at concerts or other events, workers at conventions, assisting with tickets at parks, working at tourist sites such as museums, zoos, or aquariums, working at sports games, working in customer relations over the phone or on a chat platform, data entry, or data control workers. What can society do to mitigate the increasing costs for retirees? As with many things, the first step is awareness. We need to be cognizant of the increased costs in essential commodities. This means making sure we have affordable housing and adequate space in seniors' residences. It also means that we're going to have to take a close look at food costs. Is it possible to reduce costs through growing more produce locally? Is there a way to streamline some of the current distribution processes? We need to find some way to keep costs down even as salaries increase. We need to put more emphasis on saving for retirement. In recent years, our governments have not set a good example. Today, far fewer people receive pensions than did in the past. This is largely a result of individuals moving from job to job more often. In the past, many people held only 1 to 4 jobs in their entire life. We also need to put more emphasis on the prevention of disease and illness. There is not enough focus of that in our society. Most of the emphasis goes to treatment after the fact. With people living longer, we need to make sure that our health expenses are kept in check. The best way to do this is to keep people active and both mentally and physically healthy as long as possible. Governments will also have to invest in facilities that either accommodate more seniors or more senior-specific facilities. This could also involve making sure that amenities are located in the vicinity of seniors' residences. We'll also have to look at how we fund CPP and how we distribute the payments. For example, if someone saves a lot through their career, should they be penalized and have to pay more for senior care because they have savings or investments? This is often the way it works, but is it fair? Should we require individuals to save more of their income when they are working? This would lead to a better balance and equity during retirement years. This way, people who are more responsible with their spending would not be on the hook for as much during retirement, as more of the care would be able to be paid by more individuals. Finally, individuals will need to take more responsibility in their finances and not rely on governments as much as in the past. Due to increasing costs, everything is becoming more expensive, and to make sure that we can be relatively comfortable in retirement, we need to make sure that we include retirement savings in our yearly expenses. This could be everything from making sure that our houses are well taken care of and can be sold for a good return when we downsize, to investing in RRSPs or stocks or mutual funds. Unfortunately, for a number of reasons, costs are increasing at a faster rate than most people expected. In order to have a comfortable retirement, individuals will need to plan better than in recent decades. They will need to take advantage of investment opportunities where possible. Individuals will also have to make sure to balance spending and savings, especially in their most productive working years. No one has a crystal ball, so we don't know exactly what the cost of essentials such as shelter and food will be in the years ahead. However, from recent trends, we do know that most commodities are more likely to cost much more than they do today. Pushing governments towards smart policies and taking account of our own financial planning are the best options that are within our grasp to make sure retirement is as comfortable as possible.